Did you know the Bible doesn't begin in Genesis? Welcome to Hebrew Insights. This channel is dedicated to restoring the new to the old, revealing what has been lost in translation, providing biblical insights to help solidify your foundation, and connecting the Christian faith to its Hebrew roots. Join me on a journey through the scriptures from a Hebrew perspective. Today's topic, the Dissent and the Dissent. So what do I mean when I say that the Bible doesn't begin in Genesis? In the scriptures, we're introduced to flashbacks. Flashbacks interrupt the chronological order of the main narrative to take a reader back in time to the past events in a character's life. A writer uses this literary device to help readers better understand present-day elements in the story or learn more about a character. Our first flashback is given to us in the book of Ezekiel in chapter 28, beginning in verse 12. It states, "Son of man, take up a lamentation for the king of Tyre, and say to him, Thus says the Lord God, you are the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty." Now we're going to look at the first word to be translated from the English, Tyre, to the Hebrew, sor. The meaning of this word is bondage. The second word we're going to look at is the English word, the Lord, which in the Hebrew states Yahovah. This is his name, and it means he is. It means eternal. It comes from hava, which means to be and to exist. The next word we're looking at is the word that is translated as Lord in the English. In the Hebrew, it is Adon, and it means ruler or master. The next word that we're looking at is perfection in the English, and it is tachan. And tachan means measurement or proportion. So what we're seeing is the full understanding of this verse. When we read it in the Hebrew, retranslated, it states, "Son of man, lift up a lamentation upon the king of bondage, and say to him, Yahovah Lord said this, you were of perfect proportions, full of wisdom, and completely beautiful." So what we see is that this being, who is now being referred to as the king of bondage, was made perfectly balanced. He was well proportioned when he was made. Moving on to verse 13. The first bit, the beginning of verse 13 states, "You were in Eden, the garden of God." And the first word we're going to look at in the English is Eden, and it is translated, it is the word Adan in the Hebrew, and it means delight, it means paradise. The next word we're going to look at is what is translated in the English as garden. And in the Hebrew, this word is ganan, and it means boundary. It means protection. It is an enclosure. The next word we're going to look at is translated as God. It is from the root ul, which means power, might, strength. So what we see when we retranslate this with the Hebrew meaning is, you were in paradise, the boundaries of God. So it's telling us that paradise is the boundaries of God. The boundaries set out by God is what is referred to as paradise. And this being was within those boundaries when he was made perfect. Moving on to verse 14. "You were the anointed cherub who covers. I established you. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked back and forth in the midst of fiery stones. So we're going to look at this word cherub in the Hebrew, and this word is keruv. And keruv is the living beings that we see in the book of Revelation that surround and cover the throne of God, that state, holy, holy, holy is Yahovah Almighty. We also see keruvim, and that's the plural for keruv. We see these beings in the book of Exodus as well, when they are creating the Ark of the Covenant by the instructions that Yahovah gives Moses. And he states to Moses to put 2 cherubim, one on each end of the cover that covers over the Ark of the Covenant. When the cover sits on top of the box with the 2 cherubim on each end, it represents the throne of Yahovah. And as we saw in the book of Revelation, the cherubim surround and cover the throne of God. We see in the book of Exodus and throughout scripture that it dictates that between the 2 cherubim is where Yahovah dwells. So what we're seeing in Exodus is the same picture that we're given in Revelation regarding these beings. So when we retranslate it, it is stating, I gave your covering as the anointed keruv. You were on the sacred mountain of God. You walked within stones of fire. So we see, as we spoke about the cherubim in the book of Exodus and the cherubim in the book of Revelation, this is an honorable position to have. It is an anointed position to cover and surround the throne of God. He's stating that this being was in his presence. This is what it means when it talks about him being on the sacred mountain of God and walking within stones of fire. Think about the book of Exodus when God descends on Mount Sinai in the view of the people in fire, and how that mountain, which is a large rock with smaller rocks on top of it, stones is just another word for rocks. It's what the Hebrew uses instead of rocks, it will always use stone. And so it's stating the same way that those rocks were on fire and the mountain is a large rock, it is giving you that same visual that this being was able to withstand and be within the presence of Yahovah as he is consuming, which is what we are given the representation of fire for, so that we understand that Yahovah is consuming. So moving on, verse 15. You were perfect in your ways from the day you were created till iniquity was found in you. So the first word we're going to look at is perfect in the English. And this word in the Hebrew is tamim, and it means without blemish, to be without blemish. The next word that we see is iniquity in the English is aval in the Hebrew, and this means to be lawless. So retranslated, what we're seeing in this verse is you were without blemish in your way from the day of your creation until we found lawlessness in you. Now we're seeing a few things here in this verse. We are seeing that to be lawless is to be blemished. So if being lawless is to have blemish, that means that when he was without blemish, made perfectly, he was lawful. He was operating, as it stated, within the boundaries of Elohim, which within the boundaries of the lawgiver. So to become lawless is to disregard those boundaries and to overstep the bounds that have been set out by the lawmaker. So this is what we're seeing in this verse. We also see here something that the English doesn't state, which is, we found lawlessness in you. So there are times in scripture we are aware of where Yahovah refers to himself in the plural. And he does this because when he created, it took himself, it took other elements of himself in order to create as well. So he honors those other elements by referring to them and giving them the recognition that they deserve. And so because we created you, we now have found lawlessness in you. Moving on to verse 16, we see, by the abundance of your trading, you became filled with violence within, and you sinned. Therefore, I cast you as a profane thing out of the mountain of God. The first word we're going to look at here is the word trading in the English. And the word trading in the English is rachal in the Hebrew. And this means to traffic merchandise. And so what we're going to see in the next word here is what is translated as sin in the English. And sin in Hebrew is hata, and the meaning of this is to transgress the law. And as we spoke of earlier, when they stated that they found lawlessness within this being, this is what it's saying. In order to be lawless, you must transgress the law. You must step outside of its boundaries. You must disregard it and move beyond the bounds that have been set by the lawmaker. So the next word that we see, which is translated in the English as profane, we see here comes from the word halal, which comes from the word chala. And I found it important to bring these two words to light because of their meaning. Now, chala means disease, and halal means empty space, outside. And so what we're seeing here is that in the retranslated version, it is stating that by your abundant trafficking, and we saw that rachal is trafficking of merchandise. So you have to then look at what is the merchandise that this being traffics. And we come to understand that what this being is trafficking is slander. It is lies, it is untruths. And by those untruths, there is deception. So by the trafficking of slander, the abundant trafficking of slander, they were filled through your violence. Now, who is they? Now, this is speaking of the other beings that reside within this society, within this kingdom, that this being is trafficking his merchandise to. So it's stating that they then also became filled with his violence. So it states that you transgressed the law, and I cast you to an empty space outside from the mountain of God. So what it's showing us here is, as the word we refer to, chala, which means disease, it's showing us that lawlessness, which is the transgression of the law, is a disease. Yahovah treats it as a disease. And when you're diseased, we see in the book of Exodus as well as Leviticus that you are to be put outside of the camp, outside of the assembly of people, in order to protect the people from then being contaminated by that disease. So this is the picture that we're getting in this verse right here. So he was cast outside of the society because he was diseased with lawlessness. So the next flashback that we are given is found in the book of Isaiah in the 14th chapter, and it begins at verse 12, and it states, How you are fallen from heaven, Lucifer, son of the morning. How you are cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations. And the first word we're going to look at is Lucifer. Now in the Hebrew, this word is halal, and this word means to praise. So we see that this being, his name, the name that was given to him was to praise. This was what he is. He was created for. When you name a thing, you state the purpose of that thing. And this is what this being was created to do, was to praise Yahovah. And we see that because, again, he was a covering cheruvim. And we see that these covering cheruvim in the book of Revelation, we state that they praise Yahovah, holy, holy, holy is Yahovah Almighty. The next word we're going to look at is shachar, which is translated in the English as morning. But this word in the Hebrew doesn't mean morning. It actually means blackness and darkness. The next word that we see is chalash, and chalash in the English is translated as weakened. Now, it is used in the wrong way in the English because it's stating that he weakened the nations when that's not what it's saying in the Hebrew. It is saying that he has been weakened. It means to prostrate, meaning that he has been submitted. That's what this word means. So in the Hebrew, when we retranslate, what do we see? How you have fallen from heaven, Hillel, son of darkness. We cut you down to the earth, submitted to nations. So what we're seeing here, again, is, contrast. This being was made perfect, was established in heaven, given a prestigious position. He was made to praise, made in everything that is good until iniquity was found in him. And now he has become the son of darkness. So it's stating that, again, we cut you down to the earth. We created you. We found lawlessness in you. Now we have cut you down. And we have to think about what it's saying here, because we're being given insight into existence before humans existed. So the earth hasn't been created yet. And if the earth hasn't been created yet, the nations haven't been created yet, because man comes from the top layer of the earth, the soil of the ground. So what it is showing us is that when they cast him to the earth, or what will soon be the earth, in being cast down, he has been submitted to the nations that will come forth later on in the story. So this is a very big difference from what we read in the English to what we're reading in the Hebrew. It gives you a proper perspective of this being. Moving on to verse 13, it states, "For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation on the farthest sides of the north." So we're going to look at the word exalt in the Hebrew, which is ma'al, and this word means treachery. So when we retranslate this is what we see. You said in your heart, I will ascend the heavens to the stars of God from treachery. I will raise my seat, and I will sit on the appointed mountain inside the hidden place. So again, this is giving us a lot of information about this being, because as it shows us that this being was made perfect and turned, he said in his heart that he was going to usurp. he was going to take what Yehovah had. And how was he going to achieve his goal? Through treachery. And we saw that when they told us that he began to traffic his merchandise, which was slander and lies. And if you know anything about the word treachery, treachery is a betrayal of trust. So this being went behind the back of his creator in order to spread this slander, in order to gain that which was not rightfully his. He wants to take God out of his position in order to be in that position himself. He's not content in being created as a being and given the prestige that he's been given. It's not enough for him to praise Yehovah. He wants to be in his place in order to receive the praise for himself. Verse 14, we read, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. And in the Hebrew, Most High is the word Elyon. Now, it means the same thing, but the reason why I brought it up here in the Hebrew is because it's more detailed. When we think or when we say the term Most High, it's become a title, and sometimes we don't think about what it actually means. So this is why I've involved this word in this as well, because when we hear Elyon and we think about its meaning, higher than all others, what comes to mind is Ul, which is the root for Elohim, which is God, which means power, might, strength. What comes to mind is Adon, which is the Hebrew word for what we translate as Lord, and it means ruler, master, as we saw earlier in the earlier verses. And it also brings to mind his name, Yehovah, which means he is eternal, which comes from to be, Hava, which means to be and to exist. So we see here that he is higher than all others because he is the foundation of all things. So this is why I included this word in here, just to give us a deeper understanding and clearer meaning of this term. So moving on to verse 14, in the Hebrew, when we retranslate, it states, I will ascend above the heights of the condensed clouds. I will make myself like him who is higher than all others. So the third flashback that we see is given to us in the book of Luke, chapter 10. And it is verse 18, and it is Yeshua speaking to his disciples. And he said to them, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. So Yeshua is sharing a recalled memory with his disciples about this being. And we know that this being did not fall while Yeshua came in the flesh, because this being was already here on the earth when the word took on flesh and came to dwell among us. So what does this mean? This means that this being had his fall while Yeshua was the word. And he's saying this because he was one of those elements that was involved in the making of this being. Remember, Yehovah referred to himself in the plural, saying, we found iniquity in you, we found lawlessness in you, and we cut you down to the earth. So not only did Yeshua see this, he took part in the casting down of Hillel to the earth. So he is sharing with his disciples and with us, recalling this time of seeing this being. And so he's saying that he saw him fall like lightning. It was in an instant. Lightning is a flash. It's very quick. So he was saying that the descent of this being was very quick. He was cast down very quick. As soon as he turned, he was cast down. And so this is incredible, because Yeshua is giving us a glimpse into a time before human beings existed. So this is the third flashback of what we've been shown in the scriptures to show us that the Bible really doesn't begin in the book of Genesis. There is a whole story that happened before the creation of the earth. And when we understand what happened before the creation of the earth, the story of the creation of the earth begins to make more sense as well as we dive into it. So I want to close off with a prayer. And this prayer comes from Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 to 27. And I'm going to read it in the retranslation of it from the Hebrew. And it states, Yehovah bless you and guard you. Yehovah make his face shine upon you and give you favor. Yehovah lift up his face towards you and grant you restitution. Place my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Now we're going to look at some of these words in the Hebrew as we did previously, because this prayer and this blessing is so significant and so important that I want you to see it the way that it was presented to us in its original language. Now, the first word we're going to look at, we've seen before, which is God's name, Yehovah. And again, to recap, it means he is eternal. It comes from the root hava, and it means to be and to exist. The next word we're going to look at is shamar, which means guard. Now, in our English, this word is keep. Yehovah bless you and keep you. And it is better translated as guard, because in order to keep something, you must guard it. If you don't guard that thing, you will be unable to keep that thing. So he is wanting to guard us. The next word that we see is shalom, and shalom is translated as peace in English, but there's so much more to this word than just peace. This is restitution, and this is a legal term. It means to restore someone back to their original position. So this is what he is wanting to do for us, and this is what shalom means, more than just peace. So when we look at the last verse in this, the last sentence in this prayer, in this blessing, it is very telling, because he is saying to put his name upon the children of Israel, that he may bless them. So he's saying to put his name upon the children, because to put something upon something else means to cover over that thing. And so he is saying to the priests who he is giving this instruction to, the priests represent pillars of the community of Yehovah. They're there to be support to the assembly. That's their job. It's not to be praised, and it's not to be honored, so to speak. It's to be, when you think of a building that has pillars, those pillars are there for support. That's what the scriptures, the words that are used in the scriptures, this is what they mean. So he is saying to them, I have placed you to take care of and support my people, and I am instructing you to bless them in this way by covering them with my name. And this is why it's so important for us not only to know his name, but to speak his name over ourselves and over one another, in order to do exactly what it is that Yehovah said to do, which is speak his name over us in order to be blessed. And to be blessed is to be covered over. It is to be protected. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Next week, we have a very intriguing and interesting topic as well. So if you enjoyed this video, you will enjoy next week's video, and I welcome you to join me in that video as well. So I hope that what I'm setting out to do, which is create a fuller understanding and a clearer picture of the scriptures, is what is happening for you. So until then, Yehovah bless you and guard you.